Hello, welcome back to my world of stuff and another episode of Doctor Who Revisited. This time we move further into the 60s, 1968, September, October, November, I think it was, 1968. The first screening of one of Doctor Who's rare forays into the surreal and the weird. It's the Mind Robber. Yes, welcome back. It's time for another episode of the Doctor Who Revisited. It's been a couple of weeks since my last one. Apologies, just haven't really had time to fit in a viewing and a recording, but today I have. This is the series where I look back at a classic Doctor Who serial in anticipation of the anniversary episodes, which are coming up just a few weeks away. I'm recording this on September the 30th. And it's quite exciting to think that tomorrow, October the 1st, we will legitimately be able to say, this new Doctor Who on next month. That's an exciting prospect. The 3 new David Tennant, Catherine Tate episodes. I can't wait. Right, I'm looking back today at The Mind Robber. This is a 5-part serial from, I think it was October, November 1968. And this I'm watching today at the request of one of my faithful viewers. Thank you for the recommendation. This probably isn't a story I would have particularly revisited, but as there's not a great deal of completed Patrick Troughton serials to choose from, I didn't want to rewatch any of the animations because I've seen them, and to be honest, they are mostly one-time watches. I thought I would pick something I haven't seen for a while, and it's a little bit underrated, and I'm glad I've watched it, so thank you for the recommendation, because I really enjoyed this. It is, as I mentioned, one of the rare examples of Doctor Who being quite surreal, and it's something it does occasionally now, but I think the only example before this was the Celestial Toymaker, where the Doctor and his companions landed in this bizarre realm run by the Toymaker, played by Michael Gough, shortly to be reinterpreted by Neil Patrick Harris in the new specials. This is another example of Doctor Who doing something very, very different. And it's a story that came about through necessity, really. I'm sure most of you Doctor Who fans will know that Patrick Troughton's third season, this is from season 6, was a fairly troubled run of episodes. There were problems with scripts, problems with various issues to do with the production itself, and it is unfortunate that with the previous season being regarded as not only Troughton's classic season but also a classic Doctor Who season. It's called the Monster Season because of the number of classic alien monsters and things that appeared in it. Troughton's final season is a bit more ramshackle, and it is a shame that this is where most of his surviving stories reside. However, The Mind Robber is something a bit unusual. It's the 6th episode of the season. It follows up the rather poor season opener than The Dominators, and it also is a 5-part series. The various issues to do with that. I think The Dominators was originally planned to be 6 episodes, but it soon became evident that the story and the script didn't stretch to that. So The Mind Robber, written by Peter Ling and directed by David Maloney, was intended to be a 4-part story, but it was extended and a 5th episode was required, an introductory episode, but of course, being the BBC and Doctor Who in the 60s, there was no money. Hence an episode set entirely within the TARDIS, and if not inside the TARDIS, then in a huge white void that was realised as an empty white BBC studio. But it actually works very well. The story is, as I said, quite surreal. It starts off with the Dr. Jamie and Zoe, Patrick Troughton, Fraser Hines, Wendy Pabry, of course, the TARDIS crew at the time, escaping the planet Dulcis, where their previous underwhelming adventure had taken place. There's an earthquake, and the TARDIS is about to be swamped by lava. The Doctor, the batteries are flat, there's a problem with the fluid link, and he has to use an emergency manoeuvre to get them away from the lava, which takes them out of time and space and into a realm of fiction and fantasy, which is where it starts to get bizarre. But the first episode itself is quite bizarre because it starts with the Doctor trying to repair something in the TARDIS. We actually see another part of the TARDIS, the power room, which is a sort of a room off the console room, which we never see again. Of course, it's never there again. Meanwhile, Jamie and Zoe, back in the control room itself, they see images on the TARDIS scanner which lure them out of the TARDIS, even though the Doctor's told them not to go. Jamie, being a Highlander, he sees the rolling hills of the Highlands, and Zoe sees an image of her city, a futuristic city in the future. As a result, that's where they think they are. So Zoe goes outside first, and Jamie goes out to try and rescue her. They find themselves in this strange white void where these peculiar white robots encircle them. The robots, of course, are in the story because they were props left over from an episode of the BBC anthology series, I think it's Out of the Unknown, that had been shown a few years before. These prop robots were still lying around, so they were just wheeled out to appear in this particular story, and they do appear again later on. The Doctor himself, he's back in the TARDIS. He's trying to resist the urge to come out of the TARDIS. But when he does, it's quite a striking image. He steps out of the TARDIS, which has been sort of bleached white. And then there's an interesting, very famous cliffhanger, one of the most famous cliffhangers in Doctor Who history. One I can remember actually very well from originally watching this back in '68, where the TARDIS seems to explode. And that's a striking image because the TARDIS is the Doctor's home, it's his sanctuary, it's his travel machine that we watched, since the beginning of the series, and to see it explode. It's quite a bizarre image. And then there's that another quite famous image of Jamie and Zoe clinging to the console as it spins round and Zoe screams. And that's the end of the first episode. It's a very unusual first episode, very economical first episode. It's done very well. It's also a very short episode. In fact, every episode of this serial is very short. Part 2 starts off with Jamie in this strange forest. He's suddenly frozen. When the Doctor finds him, Jamie's lost his face. He has to reassemble his face, but in doing so, he assembles it wrongly in the shape of another actor, Hamish Wilson, who's in fact Fraser Hines' cousin. The reason for this, again, as I'm sure you know, Fraser Hines, I think, contracted mumps. Between the first and second episode, the script had to hurriedly be rewritten so that a different Jamie could appear. I think it's really cleverly done. I mean, it's a thing you can only do in a story like this. If you had a more typical Doctor Who story, you would not have had this resource available within the story, this solution available. But it works really well because it just adds to that slightly weird sort of feel of the story. And then the Doctor and Jamie are wandering around. The new Jamie, used to say, played by Hamish Wilson, is actually very good. He sort of captures that sort of exuberance and enthusiasm that Fraser Hines had. And it's easy to believe it is the same person with a different face. He gives a very good and compelling and believable performance. Other strange characters wander into the story now. Lemuel Gulliver, played by the brilliant Bernard Horsfall, a great character actor who appeared several times in Doctor Who after this, in episodes directed by David Maloney. That's what I like about 60s and 70s television. You often had these little repertory companies of actors who would appear in different productions directed by the same director. Douglas Camfield was another Doctor Who director who did it quite a lot. But no, Bernard Horsfall plays Lemuel Gulliver, as we discover. And very cleverly, the script has all his lines from Gulliver's Travels, written by Jonathan Swift back in whenever it was, 14th, 15th century. Very clever, and it's very clever how they get the dialogue to fit his conversations with the Doctor and things. It's very, very clever. More characters come onto the scene during the course of the episode, lots of fantasy elements. They get chased by a unicorn. The Doctor and Zoe are attacked by a Medusa, which, although it looks like it's a woman with a couple of mattresses strapped to her, it's quite effective animated snakes. I was reminded actually of the Weeping Angels. It's got that sort of fear factor to it, the Medusa that turns people to stone if they look. And of course the Doctor uses the same method of defence as in the original, the myths of the Medusa and Jason and so on. Very cleverly done. You get this gang of children who appear and they sort of perform nursery rhymes. You get a futuristic superhero character called Carcass, which is possibly where the serial sort of gets a little bit silly. You get Rapunzel, who helps Jamie climb up into a castle. It's all very, very bizarre. Watching all this going on is this mysterious skull-capped figure who's called the Master. It's not the Master, it's the Master of Fiction, played by Emrys James. And of course, because of what happens later on in Doctor Who, it's easy to think, oh, it's an early version of the Master, but it isn't. And it's quite a clever idea. And in fact, the ideas behind the story are quite clever because they're not really very well explained. And they're ambiguous because the whole story itself is slightly surreal and ambiguous. This character, the Master of Fiction, we don't know his real name, played very well and very quirkily by Emrys James, the Welsh actor. He's been brought to this kingdom to create to give life to fictional characters. It's quite a convoluted plan by some mysterious aliens that we never see, apart from this master brain type thing, which we see in a sort of plastic can that are sort of pulsating. These aliens are working to bring all the humans off the Earth so that these aliens can inhabit it and colonize it. I'm not entirely sure what all the fictional stuff's got to do with it. Can't remember if it's explained in the script, but ultimately the Doctor has been lured to this domain to take over from the Master of Fiction, who's getting old and tired, and his creativity is waning. So he's identified the Doctor as somebody of a supreme intelligence and imagination who can take his place. Doctor, of course, doesn't really fancy that. And the story is really all about finding out where they are, finding out what all these weird characters are and what their relationship is, and finding a way to free themselves from the clutches of the Master. I really enjoyed watching this again. It is very, very interesting that these episodes are very short. I think it's episode 3 or 4 is the shortest ever Doctor Who episode, at just over 18 minutes. Bearing in mind, at the time in the 60s, Doctor Who was around 25 minutes, 24, 25 minutes. So these episodes do run incredibly short. Whether that's because of the first episode, which had to set things up and things had to be moved around, I'm not sure. Or whether it was just that the scripts were underwritten. Again, I'm sure it's all out there for researchers. I'm sure this has all been explained. I've read about it and forgotten. But it is interesting, the episodes are short. But it actually works quite well. Because it's quite weird and quite unusual, I think it might have got a little bit irritating if the episodes had been longer. But it sort of gets on with it. And it's actually very enjoyable. It's a very good story. Patrick Troughton's performance is particularly good. I think he must have enjoyed making this one, because it gives him a chance to, do lots of literary things, make lots of literary references, and it is interesting to see the Doctor working out where they are, how the pieces all drop into place as he understands the situation that they're in. Fraser Hines and Wendy Padbury, again, a very good support. My God, Wendy Padbury can scream. Yeah, and there's a lot of screaming in this. Fraser Hines offers the reliable, muscle that he always did in these things. There is a clunky scene, I think it's in episode 4, with Carcass, this futuristic superhero that Zoe recognises, where she has this very unconvincing fight with him, where she's just throwing him over her shoulder, judo style. The Avengers, it ain't, as a 1960s reference. But it's actually a very entertaining, very imaginative story, and it's one of the things that the Doctor Who format can always do. Doctor Who has the capacity to tell these sorts of stories, which are surreal and quite bizarre, and they're not just sort of alien invasions or alien planets. It's something a bit different, and I think this does it very well. Excellent story. Considering that season 6 doesn't have a good reputation, this and The Invasion, that famous Sideman story, probably the best serials on offer, and I'm really glad this one exists in full. So that's The Mind Robber, the latest in my Doctor Who revisits. It's on BritBox via ITVX. That's where I watched it. A nice clear, very clear transfer. It's also on DVD, of course. Right, thank you for watching. Hope you've enjoyed this little revisitation to one of the forgotten Doctor Who classics, really. I think it is one of those stories that people don't think of very often because it's not one of the obvious ones, but it's actually a very, very clever, well-written story. So thank you for watching this. If you have enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe. That'll be smashing. Like and subscribe, leave a comment, like and share and all that sort of stuff. I'll see you soon. Until I do, keep taking the stuff.